What's up, guys? I'm Chad Barnes, and welcome to the channel. Here, it's all about real car talk, from simple fixes to smart driving tips and keeping your ride in top shape. If that sounds good to you, go ahead and give the video a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button, and make sure you watch all the way through. There's a lot of good stuff coming. Let's get to
History of technology. For the first time, the Passat B7 was shown at the Paris Motor Show in 2010. However, the Germans turned out to be honest guys and did not call this generation new, it was called updated. And it is absolutely fair, because the B7 is just the B6 brought to mind. At the same time, it has received a new appearance, optics, body panels and interior have changed. Despite the fact that it is built on the PQ46 platform, the same as the previous B6, some details of the chassis, the base, and especially noticeable, the interior equipment have changed. But the engines and gearboxes remain the same. Gasoline motors here are Series EA111, EA888, and EA390, diesel, Series EA189. Of course, the most popular motor was 1.8 TSI of EA888 series with an output of 152 horsepower. The second place is occupied by 1.4 TSI of EA111 series. These motors are both a headache for car owners and a reason for pride. They'll tell you about these units themselves below. Volkswagen Passat 2010-14. There were no classic torque converter automatics on the B7, unfortunately. All two-pedal cars were with SG robots, a dry 7-speed DQ200 or a 6-speed DQ250 with a clutch in an oil bath. The drive could be both front and all-wheel drive with a Haldex clutch. There is nothing particularly interesting in suspensions. In front there is McPherson, in the rear, multi-lever. Since the Passat B7 was built on a rather old platform, it could not last long on the assembly line. In 2015, it was replaced by the next generation, based on the then new MQB platform. That's good, but you go back to the B7. What was it loved and hated for? And loved and hated to this day. In short, the main complaint is that the suspension is oaky. If not briefly, it's a bit more complicated. The point is that the Passat suspensions, especially the rear one, are not well tuned for bad roads. Inhabitants of regions where roads are good, read Moscow, are generally satisfied with everything. They are not bothered by shaking. They do not know any breakdowns, and controllability of B7 with these suspensions is good. But when the owner of the car moves out on an ordinary Russian road, the rhetoric starts to change. It is not about smoothness of suspension and softness of running. It is made knocked down, a bit stiff, especially on bad roads. It behaves well on a smooth road, but it is worth to drive out on a slightly broken road, and here the most interesting thing begins. The car for some reason jumps, not swallowing bumps, and plus incomprehensible sounds when the suspension, although the suspension is in perfect condition. Yes, complaints about the noisiness of the rear suspension are also common. Thus resource of all its elements is rather high, and most often it is necessary to change only stabilizer struts. The rest has turned out to be not quite comfortable, but durable. And on good roads Passat behaves well. Unfortunately, there are few such roads in our country. Surprisingly, very high-quality materials were used in not the most expensive car. Many people note that by 100,000 kilometers, wear and tear was almost invisible. At most, the steering wheel began to shine. Therefore, many people write, the quality of materials is excellent. This is a fact. One of the owners in the review recalled how quickly his Doberman was able to spoil the interior of the previous Japanese car, but he could not cope with the plastic of the Passat. That's a good thing. Everything turned out well in terms of ergonomics. Here I will just give a couple of quotes. Many scold the Passat for boring, but I like such boredom. I sat in the car and as if I had been driving it all my life. Everything is pleasing to the eye and also pleasant to the touch. Everything is somehow always at hand and in its place. The only drawback, in the opinion of many, is the joystick of electric mirrors control, which is not very convenient to use. However, you can get used to it. And, of course, it is glad that in rich completions it was possible to order rather rich interior, which could award Passat a share of premiumity. Especially leather pleased some people. The combination of leather Alcantara gives a comfortable perception both in winter and in summer. And everything with the interior would have been fine, if not for one detail. It is a shame, but the comfortable and at first sight quality interior disappointed VW owners with a lot of squeaks. It is difficult to precisely localize the source of extraneous sounds, and many had to disassemble the whole panel, everything inside. Is decent in Volkswagen's way, only a nasty cheap plastic insert in the center of the whole panel spoils everything, on more expensive configuration it is metal. Apparently, it generates crickets. I am trying to kill them, so far without success. The tunnel of the central air duct squeaks. Volkswagen Passat 2010-14 especially strongly. The interior annoys with obscene sounds in winter. What I didn't like is a terrible squeak of torpedo at low temperatures. After warming up it disappeared, but on cold it was annoying. Taking into account that the noise insulation of the car is good, candles in the cabin simply exhausted the soul of many people. Although some people treated them more easily, I have already got used to crickets in the panel and chips on the glass. I will replace the glass when selling the car under hull insurance and let the crickets live. They are like my own. Many people, of course, exaggerate the economy of Passats with 1.4 TSI engines. They can write so. With all sufficient dynamics the car is very economical, in the city not more than 10 in traffic jams on a highway. And in 4 to 5 it is easy to keep up. Let's tell frankly, it is difficult, even impossible to keep within these numbers easily. More plausible is such a review. On a highway it is fabulous. I manage in 6, 5-7 on a highway, thus in anything not refusing itself. In economy mode on a highway it is real to bring it to 5-6 liters on 100, but it is too cotton variant. In the city 7, 5-10 liters per 100 at me. It really depends on the amount of braking in traffic jams. The consumption with the 1.8 TSI engine is not too great either, and with the diesel it is really fabulous. Many people said that. In the same 4 liters you can fit exactly. And that's about as true as it gets. Except that diesel B7 at us did not like too much, so there are few reviews of owners of such cars. It is necessary to note that economy is a merit not only of motors, but also robots DSG. From this point of view, the combination turned out to be very successful. The big problem of EA111 series motors is their persistent unwillingness to warm up at idle speed in frosty weather. A typical feedback from a regularly freezing owner is as follows: the engine does not warm up at idle, in traffic jams 18 and below it gets cold. Is it worth saying that the heater in this mode also does not want to blow hot air? Theoretically, one of the winter problems, freezing of the windshield, should be solved by its electric heating. But here again it is a miss. It is not very effective, and many people note that it copes normally at temperatures up to -5 to 10 degrees, and further it is not enough. We can only wait for the engine to warm up. But alas, very long warming up. My wife's Kia warms up to 50 degrees and the cabin is warm, but I have an arrow only begins to move, and it is cold. Yes, waiting for 1.4 TSI of EA111 series to warm up at idle speed in frost is practically useless. There is only one way out: wait a few minutes and drive, hoping that the situation will be better on the move. In life, everything works out that way, but this disadvantage brings some suffering. There is nothing much to tell here. Almost everyone is satisfied with noise insulation, except for very demanding people who for some reason compare Passat and Mercedes E-Class. And if there are occasional claims to noise of wheel arches, then everything is just wonderful with the sound of the motor. It seems that there is no motor, silenced. In case of acceleration, the motor without tension begins to pull the car so confidently that it makes you dizzy. At the same time, the sound of the motor is practically not heard. Interestingly, the second review was written by the owner of a car with a 1.8 TSI engine, 152 horsepower. Perhaps this is due to the peculiarities of his vestibular apparatus. Sounds from the street in the Passat are also almost not heard. In a word, almost luxury, at least in terms of sound comfort. I am sure that these three magic letters, D, S and G, waited for many people. And they have. Unfortunately, these Passats were not lucky either with robots or with motors. Especially the first years of production, from 2010 to 2013. We will talk about motors below, while let's return to the boxes. At that time, not everyone knew about robots yet, and many people killed them unknowingly. They drove like classic automatics, not including neutral gear at traffic lights and in traffic jams. Therefore, first of all, these boxes died in inhabitants of large cities. Those who did not drive in traffic jams, did not engage in mindless chip tuning and spent a lot of time on the highway, were luckier. Even early robots, especially 6-speed, wet DQ250, served them longer. But others often wrote the following: on the odometer was 3,500 kilometers, the box was already beating in convulsions in traffic jams, traveled 74 tons. Replaced the clutch 2 times, under warranty. Or even worse, the first symptoms appeared at 17,000, a slight shudder in the second gear when accelerating from low speed. It did not interfere much. At 32,000 began to strain, I went to the office. The mechatronic was diagnosed. Most often had to change the clutch on DQ200. On the boxes of racers, especially after tuning, there were also breakdowns of the mechanical part of these 7-speed boxes. But DQ250, as I have already said, tolerated the abuse more calmly. As you know, the Germans are constantly working on the design of these automatic transmissions, so the late DSGs work quite reliably and for quite a long time. And their repair is already well mastered, and more often it is cheaper than repair of classic automatic transmissions. But this is now. And then DSG-7 drove people almost to madness. And it is very unfortunate that robots bringing to mind ended by the time when B7 were already finishing their conveyor life. However, there's a suspicion that most of those early DSGs on those cars had already been in for repair at least once. So if you have an interest in used B7s, it makes sense to find out when and who repaired the DSG. It might not be that bad. Many people write about how the Passat B7 is a car a little boring. They say that it is just a big car for a big family. It drives, is quiet, stands well on the road, does not bother on trifles and more from it and is not required. Owners, of course, know better, but then I have to put out a separate item: a huge love of owners to the trunk of Passat. If to estimate this automobile as a big, but boring family car, then there is nowhere without it. And almost everyone writes about it. The trunk is really not small, 560 liters. But it's not just about volume. Here is a short line of shots of love to the rear part of the Passat. The trunk is more than big, folding backrests of rear seats. Special niche for long objects, hooks for grocery bags. And the cherry on the cake, the family sits comfortably in the cabin, and there is so much space in the trunk that you can put your mother-in-law in there with all her suitcases. There's enough room. Ah, you kind man. Separately, it is worth reminding once again about the materials. Plastic is difficult to scratch, so that even if the trunk is used actively, it does not become like the floor of a Van Melon truck. The only disadvantage, which the owners note, is a large depth of the trunk. If something to put to the far wall, you will have to climb inside, which is inconvenient. Pants will definitely get dirty about the bumper. But it is possible to put up with it. Now we are getting to the best part. More precisely, the worst thing in the car. The undisputed leader of the anti-rating is EA888 motors. What's wrong with them? Just 2 quotes: I have up to 100,000, the car 81-1, 5 liters, 10,000 kilometers, i.e. before the replacement is not so much. But after 100,000 oil consumption began to increase in progression and reached 1 liter, 500 kilometers, patience came to an end. When the consumption became 1 liter per 200 kilometers. I think everything is clear. But some things require clarification. First of all, monstrous and massive oil spillage is characteristic of motors before 2013. In 2013, EA888 changed a lot. First of all, the changes affected the piston group. We cannot say that the problem has completely disappeared, but it has definitely become much less frequent. And most importantly, not on such a scale, a liter of oil per 200 kilometers. It is, of course, good, but the 1.8 TSI engine, which is a favorite in Russia, turned out to be a real disaster in its time. And if on small runs it pleased with very good characteristics, then later oil consumption could grow at any moment and often at once very much. Repair even then was expensive, in 100 to 150,000 depending on the place and scope of work. Of course, it was better to make it Gen 3, third generation EA888 at once, but not everyone dared to do it. And it's a shame that many sold the cars as is, with wild oil consumption. I'm not sure all sellers were honest enough to tell buyers about the problem. It is interesting that some owners were indifferent to oil consumption. They said, a turbo motor always eats oil. The opinion is very erroneous, but, apparently, it was calmer to live this way. Such iron people ride approximately in this way, 1,000 kilometers of active driving equals 0.5 liter of oil. In my opinion, there is nothing unusual and nothing scary in it. Well, how to say? EA111 motors are not a gift either. There were some problems with oil buildup and with early stretching of timing chain. But there are fewer complaints about them. But EA888. If it were not for the engine with its love to eat oil, the car is great. I've been thinking for a long time about what to put at the top of the ranking of reasons to love the B7. Size. Trite. Comfort. Not good enough. Soundproofing. It's praised by many, but there are better. As a result, after reading, probably, several hundred reviews, and it is not such an easy brain labor, as it seems, I came to an unexpected conclusion: most of all Passats are loved for trouble-free operation. Exactly in that wording, because reliability is something else. Let me try to explain it in other words. There are almost no reviews on the internet that say that the Passat B7 has something constantly breaking. The body is well painted, and even if there are chips, galvanization saves from rust. Sometimes chrome fades, but very rarely. The chassis can knock, but the resource of all parts is very decent. Sometimes complain about the algorithm of the rain sensor, but there are no other questions to the electrics. The interior is a bit boring, but very comfortable and enduring. If there were no problems with motors and boxes, there would definitely be reliability here now. But there are problems with them. However, there is another opinion. Many people say that frequent oil changes can save both engines and boxes, rather, you can delay their demise, but that's not the point. And everyone comes to the opinion that neither dies silently. As soon as DSG starts to twitch, you should go for diagnostics, not wait until it falls apart. If the engine starts consuming oil, you should take measures at once, not wait until it catches a wedge. And the car has no other problems. That is why most often they say something like this about Passat: the car is good, but you should be ready for such expenses. You need to look for a stronger car in this category. And there are minor nuances, but they are not critical and do not affect the operation of the car as a whole. Minor nuances in this review is replacement of the clutch in the robot. The strange combination of trouble-free operation with rare major breakdowns is quite rare. Few people write like this: awesome device. Honestly, I don't even know what to complain about. As for DSG7, the topic is slippery. That is, everything is fine if it were not for motors and boxes. Some people choose a diesel because of this, some choose a manual. And someone just follows the car, not bringing the situation to the limit. And such owners are delighted with the car: it will not stand on the road because of a sudden breakdown and will not annoy with frequent failures of everything in a row. Having 150 to 200,000 rubles at the ready, you can be calm. B7 will take you anywhere, will not stand in the middle of the road. Just like that, and will not constantly suck money. And it will drive you safely and comfortably. That's just great. But it is necessary to keep 150 to 200,000 at the ready. You never know. In conclusion, the Volkswagen Passat B7 presents a compelling case for both buyers and those considering alternatives. On one hand, its impressive build quality, spacious interior, and strong performance make it an attractive option. However, potential drawbacks such as maintenance costs, fuel efficiency, and the availability of newer models should not be overlooked. Ultimately, the decision to buy or not to buy the Passat B7 depends on your individual needs and preferences. Weigh these factors carefully to determine if this vehicle aligns with your lifestyle and budget. Thank you for watching, and we hope this discussion has helped you make an informed choice.